Hi folks, welcome to another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Jim Thompson and Douglas Mackenzie here again to chat to one of our cronies from around the Burns world. How you doing, Jim?
Doing great, Douglas. Nice to see everybody. Hi.
Well, tonight's guest, folks, is the founder and current president of Newton Stewart Burns Club. So cronies everywhere, please welcome Lex Muir.
Good evening, gentlemen. Lovely to see you both.
Hi, Lex. How's the weather down your way?
I can look out just now and it's pouring. That's good for the fishermen, though. So I'm happy to see that.
No bother. And are you a fisherman?
I'm keen on the fishing. Yes, that's one of my.
Oh well, that's added to our question list then. Lex, you've seen a few of these podcasts, so the first question is always the same. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Surely. Well, to start right back at the beginning, I was born in April '61 down in Dumfries, which is where every bairn for this neck of the woods was born back then, and came back home very soon to Minnigaff and stayed in what was known as the Gables, which was old kind of flatted dwellings down near the Cree. Within a couple of years, moved up to the new houses up at Carrochru Avenue, which is where the golf course is now. Beautiful wee spot. And I spent all of my life in Minnigaff right up until adulthood. And I love Minnigaff, got a fantastic fondness for it and loads of wonderful memories. Went to Minnigaff Primary School. And in fact, I went to the old school for the first 6 months or so of my schooling. And it then closed and we went to what was then the new school, which of course is about 55 years old now. Stayed there until I moved up to the Douglas Ewart High School, our local secondary school. And I stayed there until I was 17 and I left at 17. I had some aspirations about going on to uni. I quite fancied law, but I wasn't convinced I would get the grades. And the chance of work in the bank came along and I took it, and then I did get the grades, but I've never regretted. So back to my life. My mum was one girl and who had 5 brothers, and my mother had 1 boy and 5 girls. So I grew up with 5 sisters, and everybody used to tell me how lucky I was to get so well looked after. But the reality was a wee bit different. But great childhood in Minnigaff, a fantastic place, old housing scheme, and everybody was fantastically friendly and great memories of that place. Loved Minnigaff and still do.
I missed Lex there when you were talking about your 5 sisters. Were you the youngest, or were you
I'm
in the middle there?
I've 1 sister that's older than me, and then I've got 4 younger, and then 2 of my younger sisters are twins, and one of them had triplets, all girls.
Wow.
So we're good at something.
Aye. That's real family building.
Aye, yes, and we're all very close, like we're very fortunate. In fact, one of the sister who had triplets, her oldest boy gets married this Friday up in Allaby, beside the banks at Doon, so looking forward to that.
Very good.
Yes. But anyway, childhood, great, loads of good memories. Grew up, as I say, I started working in the bank when I was 17. I had 6 years in the bank. Didn't really like it too much and left after about 6 years and joined Prudential Assurance Company, a name that you'll know no doubt.
Yeah.
And I had over 15 years with the Prudential Assurance Company, a lot of that time up in Ayrshire, actually. I was a manager up in Ayrshire. I left there 22 years ago to set up my own practice in financial services, and that's taken me to here. So I've only ever had 3 jobs in effect, and I've been lucky enough to enjoy them all.
And is your business based in Newton Stewart?
Yep, you're based away office down the street there. Covered quite a lot of Galloway and even further afield than that, but fairly small practice. We've kept it small to provide hopefully a good service to not too many people, but very lucky in what I do.
And you get involved in the community if your business is in the centre of the town?
Aye, I'm a great believer. I'm very fond of where I live, and I'm a great believer in trying to give it at least a wee bit back. I've been a member of the mountain rescue team for over 10 years. So I'm involved in that. To a lesser extent nowadays, I was chairman for a number of years, but I stepped back for that just a few months ago, actually. But I'm involved in a number of different things, I suppose. I'm currently involved very heavily in setting up a men's shed down here. We don't have a men's shed in Newton Stewart. I don't know if you're aware of that movement, but it's a movement for, well, mostly for older men, to try and bring them together and improve their lives through meeting up with people and spending time socially, learning crafts, things like that. So I'm very involved in that just now as well, and other wee bits and pieces.
Very good. You need to tell us a bit more about the men's shed movement, because certainly where I live, we don't have one.
Oh, it's a fantastic thing, it really is, yeah. You want that now?
Aye.
Well, it started out, the movement started out in Australia just over 20 years ago, where these guys had decided to get together and you know, do crafts and woodwork and metalwork and all these types of things. And then people got to hear of it, and it started to grow, and it become more organised, better known, and it's now spread internationally. And there's hundreds of these men's sheds, I think, in Britain alone. In fact, loads of wee communities have them now. And the idea is that they're predominantly for the well-being of elderly men, more elderly men, that might otherwise become socially isolated. And so they get together, some of them just once a week, some of them every day. And they do things like woodworking, metalworking, photography, anything. There's nothing off the table, really. And so I had started to try and put one of these together immediately before COVID. But COVID came along, and that thwarted us a wee bit until the back end of last year. We're now set up, we're fully constituted, we have charitable status, and we're hunting for premises. We're struggling to get decent premises, but we're working hard at that just now. But great movement, and a great bunch of guys. We've got 40 members already, and we're limiting it to 40, just so that it's manageable until we see where we're going with it.
Very good. And have you learned any new skills since you started?
I'm a man with very limited skill sets, I'm afraid. No, not really. I'm keen though. I'm very keen to learn new things. But it was a wee bit of a selfish move originally, because my stepfather-in-law, I thought, could benefit from something like this. He hadn't been keeping so well, and so, you know, speaking to people, I learned about this thing and set it up. So I see it, my position is just to try and help get the thing up and running. And beyond that, I won't be too involved in the next few years, but later on, certainly I hope to be.
Very good. Presumably when you've more time.
When I've more time, aye.
Yeah,
just exactly.
Very good. And you mentioned the mountain rescue team. I noticed from Facebook that you still do quite a bit of walking and such like.
I like walking.
And is it mainly round about the Galloway Hills?
Aye, we've not been doing quite as many hills lately. My wife and I both like walking, so we do quite a bit of walking. And my wife has trouble with a knee, so she's not as keen in the hills, especially not many of the Galloway Hills have paths on them. And if you want to go and see the really nicer areas, you have to go off the paths quite often. So we've quite a few wee routes in our area that we go and do. I like to do 5, 6, 7, even more miles sometimes. But I love the hills. There's nothing finer than the Galloway Hills.
And what about other sports and interests?
Well, now, football, I'm a massive football fan, and this is a big week for me. If you know anything much about football, you'll maybe realise why. I've mentioned my fishing. Does it
involve sombreros and going to Seville?
Unfortunately, not for me, but aye. Yep, but I'll certainly be watching it with a crowd of friends. I've mentioned my fishing. I quite like my garden. Well, I'm no short of hobbies, to be honest. I'm quite lucky.
What kind of fishing do you do?
Salmon and trout, fly fishing almost exclusively. We're quite spoiled in our area. We've got a good river in the Cree, which there's been a lot of good work done with a hatchery in recent years. So the stocks of salmon returning to the Cree are much better than they were. And we've sea trout in the Cree, and we've some really good trout lochs round about here. Again, we're spoiled. It's just a great place that we live in.
And going back to school, you talked about your primary school at Minnegaff, I think you said, and you talked also about the Douglas Stewart High School. Did your subjects at school lead you towards what you eventually get involved in finance?
No, I don't think you could say that. Funnily enough, one of the things that I tended to struggle with at school was maths initially. I just couldn't really grasp them that well. And I remember one of my teachers saying to me that I had found my own way to work things out, and he was quite impressed with me. Eventually I did get it, and I have no problems at all now. But no, my big subjects were really English, history and geography. These were the things that I was very interested in and remain so to this day. English obviously leads you on to literature and poetry and all these types of things. So yeah, I never found study a difficult thing. I enjoyed studying it. I don't think I've ever stopped learning. I've always interested in learning new things. And a book was always a great friend to me. So that was, schoolwork wasn't really difficult.
So was it heading the book to avoid getting annoyed by your sisters?
Might have been partly that, aye. Yeah, and I suppose the fishing being often quite a solitary pursuit, there maybe was something within that it was nice to get away and have peace. And we lived in a house that wasn't that big for 6 kids. My dad worked away a lot. My father, he started working as a labourer for a company called Cruikshank and Partners when I was a wee boy. And he worked his way, something that couldn't be done nowadays, he worked his way all up to an electrical engineer with Cruikshank and Partners, which was eventually bought over by Balfour Beatty.
Mm-hmm.
And my father worked all over the world in massive complexes of things for electrical installations, places like Oman and Jordan and United Arab Emirates, all these places. And he ended up in a great career with them. As I say, something that I don't imagine could happen nowadays. But what that meant was that he was away from home an awful lot. And so my mum was stuck at home with 6 kids. And she was really, if you think of it, she was almost like a single parent, having to rear these bairns. But I'm sure we were a handful, but we wouldn't be that difficult.
And during all this time, you've had your own family. You've not told us about them yet.
Aye. Well, I'm married this year for 32 years.
Wow.
To my wife, Gail. 32 years come the 4th of August. And we have 2 kids. We have my son, Daniel, who's 28, and my daughter, Ellie, who's 26. Both my kids work for me in my practice, so I'm very proud to have them there. And they keep me right as well.
Oh, very good, very good.
Gail's, I should tell you, Gail's a classroom assistant. She works down at Creetown Primary School. She's been there for 16 years and thoroughly enjoys working with the kids. She also does respite work for a wee boy that she originally helped look after at the school, but she built a relationship with this wee boy who's really quite severely handicapped. You might have heard of SWAN, which is syndrome without a name.
Yeah, I think I've heard it mentioned, yeah.
They think it's genetic, and this wee soul can't do anything for himself. So my wife does respite over a period of a whole weekend, usually about once a month or something. So it's a fantastic job she does there, one that not many people could do as well as she does.
Very good. It sounds as though the whole family keeps themselves very busy.
Aye, well, yes, we like to. My daughter's currently out in Kefalonia with her boyfriend, enjoying the sun. Lucky her.
I should maybe see some turtles hatching out there.
She's already had WhatsApp videos of many turtles sent back to us.
Very good.
She loves it well.
My daughter went out there just on a secondment at university and was involved in helping to, I don't know what you do to help turtles to lay eggs and then breed, but she was involved in a project out there. Aye,
they protect them. My daughter worked abroad for a wee while in Zante, and I went to visit her with a pal for a long weekend once, and the turtles breed in one of the beaches there, and they were very protected, and people used to guard the beaches and such like. You couldn't get down onto them, so something similar to that maybe. Yeah,
well, I think they'd to dig up the eggs and size them and put them back in and monitor them, and then when they hatched, they had to help them get to the sea to avoid the seagulls picking them off, things like that.
Right.
All sounded very exciting.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Aye, anything in the natural world. My daughter's Ellie, by the way, and my son's Daniel. He's as big a Rangers fan as I am, and we'll be sitting pretty tight together on Wednesday night with some friends.
Very good. Well, I'm not an Old Firm supporter, but I'm happy for them to do well when they're representing Scotland.
Very good.
Well, let's move on. We talked about primary school, and obviously one of the questions would be, did you do any burns at primary school? But I'll pass over to Jim to get you started talking about that stuff.
Grand, thanks.
I love the way Douglas says he's not an old firm supporter. He follows Ayr United, so he doesn't really follow football at all. Well, the first question is the same for everybody. How did you get started with burns?
Well, you know, I've been giving this a bit of thought, Jim, this last week, because I can remember at the school, and I'm sure it would be primary school, I can remember hearing at least bits of Tam O'Shanter, because I remember even back then captivating me. The beauty of some of the words in Tam O'Shanter for the type of tale it is, to me, is wonderful. And I can remember it from then, but I couldn't say that I got much involved, although I do remember our music teacher once putting us all in the wee assembly room and putting us all in lines and then getting us all to sing a line from Ye Banks and Braes to see who could sing. And she put me to the quick because she didn't even let me finish my line before she told me to stop. So that's how good my singing voice is, and I have to be honest and say it hasn't improved much since. But then beyond that and through the high school, not really any involvement with burns, but burns was in my family. My mum's brother, my Uncle Jock, sadly departed, was a great Burnsian. And he, when I was a boy, like as a teenager, a young man, all the pubs in Newton Stewart used to have their own burn supper. There was burn suppers galore. And my Uncle Jock used to do the rounds to address the haggis. And I'm not so sure he was as fond of the suppers as he was of the whiskey that he got, but he was well known for that. My mother's father, who died when she was just a wee lassie, he died when he was 52. He was a renowned burns reciter in our area, and had the distinction of being so even although he was entirely deaf. And my mum tells me the story about she used to go with him when he was reciting because she would dance at the suppers. And she tells me there was only once that he ever got stuck reciting, and of course nobody could prompt him because he couldn't hear them. And he eventually stumbled through and found his way, but he was very well known for his recitations of all the classics. And so there was always this wee bit there. What I did get from my mum's been a voracious reader all her life, and I've been the same. Right from a wee boy, I was always reading, usually more than one book, and always loved words. And so it was impossible that I wouldn't eventually become quite involved in burns. But my time in burns that I started to get involved in suppers properly will be around about 30 years ago, I think, and it was through the Masonic Lodge. We decided in my lodge to have a burn supper really as a fundraiser, and I started then, and really it just grew and grew from then. And I took a real interest in Burns and his works and his life. Really, he's such a fascinating character. And, you know, anyone that does study Burns can't be surprised that things keep going on and that new immortal memories can be brought out, because there's so many facets that you can bring to the man. And so it just grew from there. And I would attend regular Burns suppers, and I did a wee bit of speaking. Didn't really recite back then. And I always felt that it was wrong that Newton Stewart didn't have a Burns club, and I couldn't find any record of there having been a Burns club in Newton Stewart. And then I was invited over to a supper just as a guest in Castle Douglas, and the gentleman that invited me would be speaking. And I said, you know, I thought we should have a Burns club, but had never formed one because I didn't feel I had the time. And he said, well, our Burns club, meets 3 times a year, and one of those times is the supper. So you don't need to meet every month or whatever. So that set me thinking. And I spoke to my brother-in-law, Dominic, and a pal of mine from the lodge. Well, we're all in the lodge then. Martin, to see if they would help me join a club. They were keen, and so I wrote out to 30 people, making them aware of my suggestion. And I think 23 had come back to become founder members of the club. And of course, when you start to do these things, you get more and more involved. I met loads of fantastic people early in that time who were always so keen to help me and always keen to come and speak and do whatever. And of course, I started to get invited to speak more often as well, which is a great way of meeting new speakers to invite for the following year. I always book our speakers. That's one of my jobs. I organise our supper, book our speakers. And I usually have them booked 2 years in advance, just so that we know we have good speakers. Clearly, if you're running about close to your supper looking for a speaker, all the good speakers are taken. So I always try and make sure I'm planned well in advance for that. And so Burns it's just became a massive part of my life. Right? There's no a day I'll not recite a wee bit of Burns to myself or read a wee bit of Burns. As I said earlier, I like to do my walking and my fishing. And there's nothing better if you're on your own than just starting to run through the poems that you enjoy. What a pleasure. Other folk, when they can't get to sleep at night, count sheep, I'll recite a poem. And that helps me just fine. So what am I involved in? I'm a member of quite a few clubs now. I know a number of years ago, Alloway were looking for members. We were up at something, my pal and I can't remember just what it was now, but they were looking for members. So I joined Alloway and I'm a member of Alloway, keep my membership up. I'm a member of Ellisland, of Wigtown Burns Supper. Quite a few. I like to try and get to quite a few suppers each year. I try and, if I go to 8 suppers, I'll try and go to 4 that I speak at and 4 that I don't, so that you can just sit and enjoy it as well. But I'm happy to do anything. I'm not happy to sing. But any of the speeches I'm comfortable with, but I'm not a natural comic, so I don't often do the toast to the lassies. But the Immortal Memories and Recitations and such like, I thoroughly enjoy. Great fun.
You've certainly got a reputation, as we say in Ayrshire, a reader, someone who recites Burns. How many have you got in that backpack of yours in terms of recitations?
Not that many, Jim, if I'm being honest. There's maybe 10 poems. I have to work really hard to learn to recite the poems. I had some health issues about 15 years ago, and during an operation I had a mini stroke. And I think that had a wee bit of an impact on my memory. It takes me a while to learn something like Tam O'Shanter or the Holy Fair or something. I have to really, really work at it. But I mean, I do like a Holy Wally and, Address to Duncan Gede, the Weans, Tea Moose, Tea Moose, these kind of things. Yeah. But I've only really got 2 proper party pieces, which is the Holy Fair and Tam O'Shanter.
Now you're throwing down a wee challenge there for a bit of the Holy Fair coming out, I'm thinking.
Love the Holy Fair. I was hoping to get up to the Holy Fair on the 28th, but my brother-in-law's throwing his 50th birthday party that day, and it's an all-day event. I've never been to the Holy Fair, so it'll have to be next year.
It's a good day out. I remember when it first started, and they had ministers dressed in the old kit, walking around and lambasting everybody and all that stuff. It was great fun, it really was.
Brilliant. I have a copy of a painting down in my office. It's no Gaudi, I can't remember who it is now, but it's one of the famous paintings. I just have a print of it at the Holy Fair, and you could look at it all day long, especially if you know the poem. Pick the characters out.
Speaking of paintings, or pictures, I'm looking over your shoulder there, and I'm seeing something, and I'm just wondering if I know the artist.
Well, I think you do. That's one of my pride and joys. That's Duncan, one of Duncan's originals. That I was up at his when he opened it at the Earts. He did his world opening, which the phrase that they use, it was the first night, and I went up and what a great night. And Duncan, like a number of people, if COVID has done anything for us, it's let us meet people that we might never have met. I mean, I didn't know Duncan before that. People like Billy Horn, Bobby Jess, people like that, Wally Dick, folk that he met, because I've been lucky enough to, I can't quite remember how I managed to get involved in the Bachelor's Performers online when they were doing that. But I did somehow. I can't think how I did, but I did.
We just didn't manage to blackball you quickly enough.
No, that was your problem, aye. Although I kind of felt I nearly got blackballed, because one of the first nights I was there, they were talking about humanist celebrants, because there's a couple of the people that go there, Kami being one of them. And they were trying to come up with a name for a group of humanist celebrants. And before I knew what I was saying, I suggested a rabble of celebrants. And in my mind, it was quite amusing, but later on I thought, Craigie, I've probably lost a few friends tonight. I hope if they're watching this, I'll accept that apology. But
I don't think you don't need to worry about that group.
No,
They're not easily offended.
a fantastic group. And I've been up a couple of times to the Birthplace Museum now, when they started having them then. I hadn't been up to the actual club yet, but we'll get there. But I was so pleased when I watched your YouTube video last night, when you're saying about doing this new series, if you like, of their life with Robert Burns, and you mentioned Billy Horne. I'd only met Billy that one night, the last time I was up at the Bachelors, which was just very few weeks before his accident. But I had talked to him online, and I'd listened to him, and oh, what a character. Bobby Jess as well. Bobby's become a friend of mine, even though I've only met him 2 or 3 times, but he's just one of those engaging characters. But the Burns movement's full of people like that. Everywhere you go, they're just kindred spirits. It's one of the biggest attractions about it.
Yeah, certainly. We found it very easy in organising these podcasts. Everybody that's come on been very easy to talk to and been very easy to work with. It's not been a problem anywhere.
Now, there we go. There's the proof out, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very lucky.
Anyway, we were talking about you, so we were about to try and persuade you into maybe a couple of verses of a poem.
Right. I'm not a great man for jumping into poems. If I'm being honest, so, one of my pals, you could say to him, and I kid you not, you could say to him to give you the 15th verse of Tam O'Shanter, and he could do it just like that. I can't do that. I have to get into the rhythm of things. But I've got a couple of lines in front of me just to start me off, so I wouldn't mind doing a very wee bit, of the Holy Fair.
Lovely.
Let's do this. But now the Lord's own trumpet touts till the hills are rearing, and echoes back return the shouts. Black Russell isn't sparing. His piercing words like Highland swords divide the joints in Mara. His tack o' hell, where devils dwell, our very souls does harrow fricht that day. A vast, unbottomed, boundless pit, filled full of low and brimstone, whose raging flame and scorching heat would melt the hardest whinstone. A half asleep, start up with fear and think they hear it roaring, when presently it disappear. 'Twas but some neighbour snoring, asleep that day. Well, that day.
That was lovely. We might persuade you into something else before we're finished, but that was great to get us started.
Right you go. Thank you.
And everybody's in Mauchline, which is where I'm based. Everybody's looking forward to the Holy Fair. It's had a great history. The Burns Club used to organise the Holy Fair, and they after about, I think it was about 15 years, they felt they were getting a bit too old for it and decided they would need to give it up. Unfortunately, the young people of the village decided to keep it going, and it's been going ever since. So it's been great, especially getting a lot of the younger guys involved.
2 things when you say that, if I can jump in. First of all, about getting young folk involved. One thing I haven't told you that you might have heard of that I started doing about 6 years ago is having nights which I called the Bard in the Bottle.
Right.
And these were nights which were a celebration, what I called, of 2 of Scotland's greatest gifts to the world. And the Bard's pretty obviously Robert Burns, and the bottle was malt whisky. Mm-hmm. And so what we do is we have a group, we try and keep it to about 20 people, so that it's quite intimate. And we have a malt whisky for every region, so 5 or 6 depending upon how you feel about that. And we have someone to introduce each bottle, either a speaker on whisky for the night who'll introduce every bottle, or people who are there who'll introduce a bottle and tell a wee bit of history of the distillery and such like. And interspersed between the dram tasting is recitations for some capable people, and they're fantastic nights, absolutely brilliant nights. They talk about them for weeks after it. And what that has done is it's brought in a younger element to our suppers as well as to the Bard in the Bottle. And we've got quite a number, when I say younger, 30, maybe 30 to 35-year-olds who are really capable people coming in. And my second point, when you were talking about performing, being Ayrshire men, you might not agree with this, but I find that there's an ability in Ayrshire that you just don't find elsewhere. Now, there's loads of abilities everywhere, but there's something about Ayrshire people that allows them to perform in a way that most people can't. I even seen it in Freemasonry. Now, I don't know, I've thought about this and talked about this long and weary to folk. I don't know if it's because there's a connection to the Bard, I don't know. If there was, we could say the same about Dumfries, where there's loads of capable people as well. There's just something about Ayrshire. Or maybe it's just me.
Well, that's a great discussion point. If there's anybody out there with a different opinion or a slant on that, get in touch, because that's very interesting.
And another thing is about it, to be honest with you, I think it's a wee bit generational, because I don't know how many events I go to in a year, but we're of a generation that can amuse ourselves.
Aye, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
I suppose.
and I don't think it's as prevalent now as it was. I mean, when I grew up, your Saturday night was in your granny's house and they were all doing wee turns.
Aye, yep. Aye, life's different now. We have a thing, or I have a thing in our supper that only 1 year out of our 13 suppers has the person who addresses the haggis done it before. We always try and bring someone in who's never done it before, and we help them a lot and help their nerves and so on and so forth. But it's just a way of bringing new speakers in and getting people involved, and it's worked really well. But you need young blood. I mean, I've seen it with so many clubs in our area that the clubs grow older as the people grow older, and they're not being replaced. There's a couple of suppers here that struggled for a wee while because of that. His numbers were dwindling because people were passing away. But the couple I'm thinking of are coming back quite a wee bit now. But we need to keep it going. Yeah,
that's great. I mean, in our club at New Cumnock, and long before my time or Jim's time, they started a thing called a smoker. Obviously, the term smoker is not really relevant nowadays, but the point of the smoker was to encourage new speakers, inexperienced speakers, and whether they just come along and talk about their job or talk about their favourite football team or whatever. It's an opportunity to stand up and talk about something for 5 minutes, and it's amazing how many speakers have come through that route.
But there we go. Just encouraging people and giving them the opportunity.
Yeah,
we do that.
I like your Bard in the Bottle idea. That sounds one that's worth trying.
We'll have one on the 23rd of September, and I'm sure if you gentlemen fancied it, we could find space for you. Well, we can talk about that again.
Well, I would definitely be coming, but I can't, because Mrs. Thompson's booked a holiday and I'm not here.
Oh,
I'd love to come for a night of that.
Well, we'll keep you the next time, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
We've got old cronies like David Miller and David Smith from Dumfries tend to come across to them. Ian McIntyre, George Juan, people like that. So it's not just our wee neck of the woods. They come from a wee distance. Just people that started off the first time they came to it, and they've kept coming. So it can't be that bad at night.
Well,
it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you spoke earlier on about not being a singer. Do you have a favourite bird song? Just the same.
I can't get away from A Fond Kiss. It swells the heart. I think it's beautiful. I just love it. Nothing compares to it for me. Eddie Reader particularly.
Aye, but I mean, it always strikes me when I hear folk like yourself talking about being at the school and the teachers getting you to sing your Banks and Braes and your male. I've never understood it, and I don't think I ever will.
No, don't know.
It's such a feminine song, and the ending of it is so, so much attached to femininity. It's just strange that the competitions and the boys are all singing it.
I think she got a wee pleasure out of the different days. These was in the way in the 60s. What would that be, 67 or 68? Mm-hmm. And I thought it was quite cruel. I can still feel it. I can still remember how I felt that day. So that would tell you either something about her or something about me, or maybe something about both of us. But although I can't sing, I love music. I play the guitar. I've played the guitar almost all my life, and I plither about with other things like the piano and such like. So music's a great passion of mine as well. But very much a journeyman, no great ability, I'm afraid, as with most things. But That's okay. I do it for pleasure. As a man once said to me, I play the guitar because I like it, not because I'm good at it.
And you play with a band at all?
Not now. I used to, again, we formed a band down in the Masonic Lodge in Creetown. I don't know if you ever heard of Creetown Country Festival. They had a thing going for a long time, recently resurrected, but a wee bit differently. And so we used to open the lodge as a fundraiser, and a few of us in there played instruments. And so we formed a band which we called, well, two names, Band of Brothers and Unity Brothers. And we just country and western music. And we used to fill the place over the weekend. It was fantastic times and raised lots of money for the lodge as well.
Oh, very good.
And I played with them for quite a number of years, but I didn't want to be playing in the band every week. You know, once a month would have done me. And anyway, it kind of died a death. All the rest of them still play, and I just play for fun. But I was the weak link in the band anyway.
Yeah, well, Band of Brothers, that's, you know,
It's a good name, wasn't it?
Right, well, you're back to literature again. We very few,
yeah.
we Band of Brothers.
Good name.
You know, it's great how it all just comes round in a circle.
I know, isn't it? Just, yeah. That was great times. I enjoyed it.
But see, in relation to Burns, is there anything in his, you know, his associates, the folk he actually writes poems about, that you find interesting?
Well, a lot of people, I mean, people's character and personality is fascinating. I love stories. I've got a very romantic notion of the past, like probably most of us. And they're very real to me. I mean, the characters in Burns' poem, even Willie Wassell's wife, to me, I can picture her. You know, they're just, if you could find plenty of people that you would say, I particularly mean something, but a lot of the time, it's more the kind of collective picture. So if you think of the Cotter Saturday Night, you think of the picture of the family, you know, the way that life would have been then. And it doesn't paint too bad a picture of life. They had a relatively comfortable life, didn't they? They worked hard for what they had, and they didn't have much, but it focused on the important part, the love that was in the family, the respect they had for one another and things. And I get a kind of collective picture of that. So it's a romantic view of things, I suppose. But I mean, Tam O'Shanter, we are kind of Tam O'Shanter. Some of us have been a Tam O'Shanter different times of our life. The ministers in the Holy Fair. Yeah, just people and characters. Burns was obviously a great student of people's characters, whether he admired them or whether he felt differently about them. Jail of Prake, you know, just, yeah. But no one that I think I could say, oh, that's my Burns hero. My only Burns hero probably is Burns himself, because he was a hero. I'm a man for heroes, though. But he was, well, don't need to tell you fellas, Burns was exceptional.
You talked about the painting of it that's behind you, Duncan Brown. One of the things that Duncan said is that, and he talked about, I think it was 137 paintings he'd done in kind of one weekend sitting or something like that. And he picked occasions, things that were happening, people meeting and such like, to portray, rather than portraits and such like, although he does excellent portraits as well. But it was interesting that he was picking occasions, even if that occasion was, you know, two guys meeting and shaking hands. It was enough to be able to freeze a point in time.
Aye, but all that one man's taken things, and I don't know if you saw the exhibition, but oh, you could have spent hours upon hours going through it and building your own pictures for them. And most of them you could work out where they were from, and Duncan was there to enlighten us. But yeah,
I didn't get the chance. It was slap bang in the middle of not getting out of the house time. But Duncan, in our conversations with him, shared a number of videos with us of a lot of his work. So it was absolutely fascinating.
He's a very, very talented guy and an absolute gentleman. When I went to collect that picture, he had, as a favour to me, he had done me a painting of Walter Smith and just brought it along for me. Class, you know.
Tremendous.
Fantastic. Oh yeah, just an absolute gentleman. Yeah.
Anyway, your president and founder of Newton Stewart Burns Club. What about any aspirations to the Burns hierarchy or the federation hierarchy? Is that something that interests you?
No, I don't think so, to be honest, Douglas. I've served in lots of committees over the years, and almost always you end up that the fund goes out at least in part.
Yeah.
And no, I've been invited to go into a few committees and things, and I've always said no, because I just want Burns to be my thing. And you know, I totally admire the people that step forward and put so much time into these things. I mean, I try and get along to the Dumfries and Galloway Burns Association meetings, and I'm a member of the House Club, and I make sure I get along to at least one supper a year, one of their suppers or nights or whatever. But as far as the actual management of things and becoming involved in that, I've enough other things that I'm involved in. That's not to say maybe as time goes on and I have more time that I might get involved, but it would be in a fairly small way, I would think.
Well, could I maybe just throw a wee challenge down to you? The Burns Federation Conference this year is in the
I'm going this year.
Well,
Sorry.
The Friday, coming the Friday night. You know,
I've actually, sorry, I'm jumping in there, but funnily enough, I was speaking to Jane Brown just a week or two ago, and I said, she's a cracking girl, Jane. I'm fond of Jane. We're all fond of Jane. And I was saying that because it's in Dumfries, it would just be wrong not to attend. So no, I'll be there, and I've checked. I've got the date there. My date's free. I'm keeping it free.
The Friday nights are great. You'll love it. It's good fun and
Right.
very
Well,
enjoyable, and it's very much the camaraderie of the Burns movement. It's that, you know, meeting good folk and having a nice time.
Well, that to me, that's everything. So you can take this as my confirmation that I'll be there to see you.
Well, if you're there on the Friday night, I'll maybe just conscript you to do something I've got to say.
Oh dear, right. Maybe I'm busy that night. Do you organise it then, Jim? Is it?
Well, I'm usually the MC, or well, I have been since the previous one died, basically. It's not like it. Joe McGinty always did it for years, and if Joe didn't do it, I'd stand in occasionally.
Right.
And it just fell to me after the demise of Joe, who was one of the great singers of the world.
Right.
Just brilliant. He could entertain on his own, you know, doing Frank Sinatra stuff and all the rest of it. But
so which is the opposite of Jim Thompson.
Well, as far as singing is concerned, I'm the second worst singer in the world.
Well, we can do a duet.
No. Bad enough. You know, I'm jealous enough of you already, because I used to spend my summers as a boy down in Creetown.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, my aunt and uncle owned a hotel down there. And I used to go down when I was about 6 or 7. That's where my summers were spent, and I used to love the place. And then when I started working with bar, I would go down to a plant in Creetown. I would go down there. I'd reminisce, and I spend half the day walking about the place. So I envy very much that whole, the Valley of the Cree, all the way up. It's just a lovely part.
Well, but my father was born and grew up in Creetown. My mum spent time in Creetown. My sister with triplets lives in Creetown now. The people that worked for Bar and then ultimately 3B, my brother-in-law and his father, you and I'll have a few contacts, Jim, which we'll maybe save for another time. Tonight's maybe not the night. But I bet you we'll have a few names that we could share in common.
Aye, there will be, because I mean the bars are quite unique. Of course, well, Duncan and his boys. Anyway, lovely folk. No, but I remember the last time I went down, the Bar Home Arms was still there the last time I was there. It's a few years ago now.
And even Ellen Gowan's closed now, falling to pieces.
Oh dear.
The roof's coming in. Sad.
Aye.
Yeah.
Time moves on. However, we're getting modelling here. I'm getting modelling.
Yeah, we don't want to start that. No.
Because when getting to your guys' age, there's a lot of nostalgia there. I'll have your greetings soon.
Oh dear. Right, just after that, best bird supper? Or most memorable bird supper?
Wow. Oh, you'd need to give me some time. I used to say, Jim, we used to go, there's a wee place, you might know it, the House at the Hill, which is about 10 miles outside Newton Stewart, tiny wee hotel out near Glentrool. And new people bought it about maybe 15 or 20 years ago, English people, and they wanted to hold a Burns supper. So they got a local farmer who's very active and very capable in the Burns, and me to do the kind of run the first night for them. And it grew into a wee bit of an institution for a while. And I always used to say it was a tiny wee place with 2 or 3 rooms. And when the speeches and the recitations come on, I used to squash them all into the one room. And I just felt it was the way a supper should be. There was maybe only 30 or 40 folk there. But I used to love that, and that was always one of my favourites. Although a great story in night, my pal was reciting Tam O'Shanter, and a woman dropped at his feet. And I used that for a wee while to introduce him. The effect he had on women doing Tam O'Shanter was that women dropped at his feet. But I didn't add the bit that she had vomited all over his shoes. They had overindulged just a wee bit too much. But I'm always struggle to find favourites and things because there's so many of them. Kind of have to say your own Burns supper. We have a fantastic supper down here. We usually have in the low 70s. We're limited, if we can, limit it to 72 because it keeps our room comfortable. And we always have such a fantastic crowd, mixed crowd in lots, not just sex, but in lots of ways. And we have fantastic nights. I adore them. I look forward to them every year. I've never been.
Where do you hold your meetings in your supper?
We hold them in the Cree Bridge House Hotel, which is over in Minnegaff. We don't have a great choice of places that can accommodate even 70 or 80 people, to be honest. But I certainly view the Cree Bridge as the home of the club. And I have my Bard and Bottle nights there as well, because they've got a cracking drawing room that they let us use for that. And so our suppers have always been there, and I don't ever see us moving away. There have to be a very good reason for doing that. But can I get away with this question by just saying I don't think I've ever been to a bad supper?
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything else that we want to try and cover? I'm hoping you'll finish off with a couple of verses or something for us. But anything else we've missed?
I'll be thinking of things later, probably, Douglas. But
okay, wait. That always happens.
The best answers in the car on the way home.
Yeah, isn't it always the case? But certainly from my point of view, I didn't think we'd managed to talk for as long as we have. Although you might edit halfway through it, I suppose. But
no.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you. I'll look forward to seeing it myself. But nothing else, I don't think, from me, other than I think it has to be said that what a fantastic venture this is that you gentlemen have put together. Here's a record for people to see for generations. Absolutely fantastic. And this new idea for Their Life with Robert Burns, if anything, it's better. So congratulations have to be sent to you for it.
Oh, thank you very much for that.
I'm just glad to be here to do mine this way.
Excellent. Well, perfect way to finish this off would be if you were to give us another couple of verses of your poem of choice. That would be tremendous.
I'll give you a wee bit out of Tam then. There's lots of ways of doing Tam, and lots of people like to jump in tables and chairs and run around. I never do that. I try, and I enjoy these ones that people do that, but I try to make the words speak. I try to make it about the story rather than about the reciter kind of thing. So I'm just going to sit here and do. I don't usually sit. I usually stand, obviously. Anyway. Warlocks and witches in a dance, nae cotillion brent new fi France, but hornpipes, jigs, strathspeys and reels put life and metal in their heels. A winnock bunker in the east, there sat Al Nick in shape of beast, a towsy tyke, black, grim and large, to give them music was his charge. He screwed the pipes and got them skirled to roof and rafters had it dirl. Coffins stood round like open presses, that showed the deed in their last dresses, and by some devilish cantrip sleight, each in its caul hand held a light, by which heroic Tam was able to note upon the haly table, murderers, banes and gibbetairns, twa spanlang wee unchristened bairns, a thief new cutted fair rape with his last gasp his cab did, 5 tomahawks with blood red rusted, 5 scimitars with murder crusted, a garter which a babe had strangled, a knife a feather's throat had mangled, whom his ain son o' life bereft, the grey hairs yet stuck to the heft, we mair a horrible enough, which even to name would be on laugher. We'll sit back at that.
Aye. Well done.
Excellent, excellent.
I
Well
don't
done,
think it
Lex.
matters- I don't think it matters how often you hear that poem. It's still, for me, always kind of.
Have you ever been down to the Dumfries Ladies competition?
I've judged it, so aye,
Wonderful.
it is, aye, and some of the ones, if you look at the early winners, I always go back there, you know, I'm obviously from Newcomer, so I'm kind of biased, but Shanklin and Brown, and then, I mean, and recently there's been a few absolute crackers who have won it.
I never met Davy Shanklin, but that's one of my big regrets. I have there was a book put out about Davy, I don't know if you've seen it, which a friend of mine gave me.
Aye, but that's Stuart Shanklin I'm talking about.
All right.
2 seconds, I think I've got that book somewhere. I'm out. Well, I'll look for it later. I've got the book you're talking about. It's a different Shanklin.
Ah, right, there we go then. Right. But lots of talent. Great night.
That's tremendous. And it's great the way it has kind of spawned quite a number of competitions. It's been great. The number of people who are willing to enter into these kind of things has been tremendous.
Isn't it just?
Ballyhorn being the perfect example.
Oh, well, you wouldn't want to come up against a Billy, would you?
Well,
No.
Cammy says that if you come up against Billy, you knew you were going to be second.
Well, exactly. You would just stay at home, wouldn't you? If you mind, you could say that about Cammy as well, to be fair.
Well, Cammy's some reciter. I mean,
I've only seen him online, but oh, he's amazing. What a great voice he has. Some of these people are blessed with voices. A voice can make such a difference.
I did the Edinburgh competition one year, and he a poem that he learned the day before he did, and won it at a canter. A dream.
Wow.
He did a dream.
What an ability.
The day before.
Amazing. Yeah. We can but aspire.
And you don't need to aspire to very much, Lex, because your talent's been on show, and it's been great talking to you about your life with Robert Burns. Thanks very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very kind. Much appreciated. Good luck to you both.